Okay, welcome members of committee. We'll call this meeting to order at 1:30. We do have a quorum with Councillor Yu attending remotely and four members of the committee here. We'll start off with a motion to adopt the agenda. Someone, thank you. Councillor Silovitz. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, I see none. We don't have any delegations, I believe. So we go right to 4.1 on our scheduled business. And it's a presentation by Gigi Lee, our Director of Financial Services and Treasurer. There'll be a 20-minute presentation on our 2023 operating forecast. Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Good afternoon, Budget Chair, Mr. Mayor, and members of Council. It's my pleasure to be here at the first Budget Committee of the whole meeting in the fall. We have 3 agenda items before you today, 2 of them with the company presentations. The first one is item 4.1, the 2023 operating forecast. Next slide, please. So what is an operating forecast? This slide summarizes the objective, the process, and the result that corresponds to the staff report in Agenda 4.1. A budget is the financial representation of a plan that is established at a moment in time. New information becomes available throughout the year. The operating forecast serves to monitor the progress towards meeting those work plan objectives, an opportunity to make informed decisions during the year and take corrective actions. It's also an early indicator of trends that may impact next year's budget. The process involves comparing the annual budget to variances that are identified throughout the year. This is typically done 2 to 3 times a year. By looking at year-to-date actual results and trend, we will be able to forecast and project what the year-end numbers would look like. Today, we're reporting an overall operating forecast that is on target to the approved budget of $200 million based on June results with projections to the end of the year, excluding the investment income surplus. The details are shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. We're navigating through the new normal as we emerge from the pandemic. It's important to note that the recovery brings along other opportunities, pressures, as well as challenges. There's significant inflationary pressures as a result of the recovery from COVID, supply chain constraints, and overall demand for goods and services. The Bank of Canada has raised interest rates 10 times over the last year or so, and we're experiencing a high interest rate environment and higher investment returns. There's a continuing trend of economic uncertainty and legislative impact that impact municipalities. The 2023 budget leverages remaining federal provincial funding from Safe Restart Agreement and the COVID recovery. Any related variances will utilize that funding that's available. As you can see on the slide, we have $5.2 million in positive variance contributors, offset by a negative contributor of $1.9 million, with an overall surplus of close to $3.3 million. Staff are recommending a transfer of the surplus related to investment income to the tax rate stabilization reserve, resulting in an adjusted forecast surplus of just over $75,000. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the positive contributors, so the significant changes from the budget that are presented. Investment income is favorable as a result of what I mentioned earlier, the higher interest rates. The cash balance is yielding a much higher return. This is considered one-time in nature, unsustainable, as there are many factors that contribute to the Bank of Canada's decision to hike or lower interest rates. For 2023 and perhaps for the foreseeable future, the city will continue to benefit from the higher rate environment. Staff are forecasting a favorable variance of $1.2 million related to tax arrears, penalties, and interest. It is an upward trend that we're seeing, that we have been seeing since the pandemic due to 2 parts: delay in active collections and also reflective of economic shifts post-COVID. Staff are investigating further and will be reporting back as part of the operating budget process. The third item on the table is the payment in lieu of taxes for the York Region Transit Facility at 55 Orlando Drive. It is an unbudgeted item, and we have been reporting this as a variance for a number of years now. It is a payment in lieu eligible property. The region has been requesting an exception, and the decision is still pending. In the meantime, we continue to receive this revenue, and we would like to maintain this as an unbudgeted item because we just don't know when that decision will come, and we can no longer rely on this revenue. And then we have a smaller variance item, which is related to license revenues. As you can see, about $182,000 related to marriage and lottery licenses, and that's based on year-to-date trend. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes all the negative contributors to the year-end production and surplus. At the very top, we're looking at supplementary taxes. They represent the in-year changes to the assessment roll. They have been trending lower over the last couple of years. We are assessing as part of the budget. And, there is also a timing difference related to supplementary taxes as well, because we do bill those 2, sometimes 3 times a year. So there is a little bit of a lag. So right now we are showing an unfavorable variance. The next item, it's pretty self-explanatory, is development planning revenues. We are projecting a lower revenue overall, about $350,000, and that's largely related to the uncertainty brought by the new legislation, which is resulting in a reduction in the revenues, as well as the applications that are coming in. Corporate gapping is related to personnel. It's a budget item primarily to recognize savings from temporary vacancies through attrition, turnovers, unpaid leaves, etc. We are projecting an unfavorable variance to year end, and that's largely related to costs identifying fire and emergency services, as well as an increase that we're seeing in the cost for retiree benefits. Based on the year-to-date trend, we are increasing the bad debt provision for uncollectible revenue related to motor vehicle accidents, as well as false alarm revenues. So that's shown, that's the $225,000 that you see on the slide. And then the 2 remaining items are smaller. The first one is facility related. So that's utilities, HVAC, and other items that are related. As you can see, savings in hydro offset by some of the other cost. Next slide, please. As part of the staff report, staff are recommending a transfer of the investment income surplus into the tax rate stabilization reserve. The tax rate stabilization reserve is generally used to offset extraordinary one-time expenses or revenue shortfalls in order to mitigate large fluctuations and increases in the annual tax levy. We view this investment income surplus to be one-time in nature and a windfall, and should be treated as part of the investment income strategy to be utilized in future years for when interest rates start to fall and when income related to investment will be reduced. With the transfer of the additional investment income, the overall operating forecast will be $75,000 on a $200 million budget, or a 0.04% variance to budget. As I mentioned earlier, the forecast is done based on a moment in time. As we get towards the latter part of the year, we will continue to take a look at the trends, and we'll have a better idea in terms of the projection to year end. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the water, wastewater, as well as stormwater forecast in comparison to the budget. Staff are projecting about $1.3 million deficit for water and wastewater, and that's primarily due to the higher water loss percentage as volumes are trending to budget. So at this point, as you can see on the slide, we are looking at a 14% water loss compared to the budget of just under 12%. And we've captured within the bracket, we have experienced a number of water main breaks, which result in the higher water loss percentage. There are also some other smaller factors that contribute to additional revenues and contract savings within that budget. So overall, we're looking at about $1.3 million in deficit. And the very last bullet at the bottom indicates that right now for stormwater management related budget, we are trending to budget and there's no significant variances to be reported. Next slide. And that concludes the presentation. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for that presentation. Just members be mindful. It's, it's a snapshot in time that this is where we're trending and what we're projecting to wind up at the end of the year. It's not necessarily where we actually will be. So on item 4.1, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor West first. Move a motion.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate all the work that gets done by our financial services staff. I've said that before, but it needs to be said again. This is an enormous amount of work that this presentation represents. So I realize that we have a very significant windfall, and it is a one-time windfall that I've never seen like that on council in my time on council, of the $3.2 million due to higher interest rates. And normally I do think that the strategy is that we should be putting that money into a reserve fund for when the conditions are not like that. But one of the things that I've been struggling with since my time on council is some of the really important and big items that we're dealing with as a municipality right now. And one of them that concerns me every single day, and I know that my colleagues would agree on this, is housing and housing affordability. And I think the $3.2 million amount that we have is a lot of money, and most of it should be put towards the reserve fund. But I'd like to move a motion that directs staff to report back to us on what can we do with a small portion of that money to dedicate it towards moving the dial on housing affordability. And this is what I would envision here is a dedicated staff person that would spend all of that person's time and resources to finding ways for us to see built forms of housing in our community that are more affordable than what we have now, and that run the gamut, everything from, relatively inexpensive, which is much harder to achieve in an environment like Richmond Hill, all the way up to, moderately affordable, but still affordable for a group of people, that we don't have housing for at the moment. At the region, we were shown a graph the other day that shows the kinds of jobs and the kinds of people that can't afford housing in our community, and it's shocking. I mean, there are people who are lawyers and practicing professionals that can't qualify with the amount of money that they're making. The province has dictated that we're to build more housing, and we have agreed to that pledge, and I agree with that initiative. And we're also working really hard in Richmond Hill with Affordability Task Force and a number of different initiatives to solidify that and get these units built. But I honestly believe right now that we don't have all the dedicated resources that we need. And so what I'd like to ask in this motion that's before us now is for some of the money to be used for dedicating on a contract basis the resources that we need over the next short period of time to move the needle on affordability and get that happening quickly. I think this is very consistent with what we need to do, and we all know we need to do as a council, but also what the province has been asking us and other municipalities in Ontario as well to do. So what I'm asking for right now is for council support in getting the staff to come back and saying, okay, well, with a small amount of money, relatively small amount of money compared to the full amount of the surplus, what could we do with that amount of money to have wins in that category that are effective and are measurable and are real? And so that's basically what I'm asking. I would like that staff report to come back at some point during the budget process. So we're not going to be waiting for this for a really long time. And then to be to be implemented as a part of whatever operating budget we eventually approve. So that's my motion, and I'm hoping for the support of this council so that we can get the staff to report back and see how it is that we can use that money to leverage something that we desperately need in this community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Davidson?
Does this require a seconder?
Not a committee, no.
Not me. Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This sounds great. I want to know from the vast knowledge in this room that staff has, does such a person exist that can look for ways to provide affordable housing that current staff don't already have the time to pursue? Like, could you, as a planning and all the knowledge in here, can you see an honest, tangible value in this position being created?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. There are other circumstances in other municipalities that have similar people working through their planning departments, specifically focusing on affordable housing and achieving the goals that those municipalities wish to achieve with such positions. So is it viable? Yes, it would assist a municipality in dealing with developers. For example, if I could give the example of the TAC development that was before council recently that was approved. We were in dialogue with them in assistance with Habitat for Humanity. So that was an outside resource that we used. If we had an inside resource, they could have assisted us in moving things forward from an affordability perspective in that project.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I agree with the mayor. We have to kickstart affordable housing in other ways that we aren't now for whatever reason. So I support this motion. I want us to at least try to figure out some ideas that aren't being explored at the moment. And the idea that it's a limited time to sort of spend this money and completely focus on this. I support the motion and think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see any other speakers. I'll just say that, okay, Regional Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the motion. It's certainly that in terms of the spirit of the motion that I would support it. And thank you, Councillor Davidson, raised some of the perhaps more pragmatic or questions. Is such resourceful person be around and also be available and take on a time limited yet to be defined contract. So I think that's a challenge. And but certainly the spirit of the motion is certainly worth support. But I just want to comment about that. That's something to be looked at. Perhaps that could be working in collaboration with we are our assisting staff. But also, I would also suggest that that it's not so much surplus. For example, in the York Region Human Services Planning Board that I have the privilege to co-chair, there's a good number of NGOs, non-government organizations that actually have expertise and have been doing things. One is actually Blue Door. They are already doing with anonymous for government in your region or moving on not-for-profit kind of housing. So I support the motion, but at the same time, I hope when the staff look at this and come back report, looking at maximizing the potential collaboration partnership with existing non-government organizations which already been doing this in the region of York, and whether in fact it would meaning more bang for the buck, whatever the dollar may be for that contract person. I think that helps Richmond Hill and York region to get us close to improving about the housing affordability, particularly in supply. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Xu.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm more than happy to see we have a $3.2 million surplus And there's a motion on the floor, and I'm going to support it because I think homelessness issue is getting worse. And one of the key factors is we don't have enough affordable housing. So I would like to support the motion on the floor. And I have only one question. According to slide number 5, supplementary taxes constitute the most significant source of negative contributors. So I would like to ask what components are included within this category? Supplementary taxes, what components are included?
Through the chair to the counselor, I missed the last part of your question. What component is?
Yeah, what components are included within this category?
So supplementary taxes, these are in-year changes to the assessment roll, right? So when MPAC forecasts the assessment and growth for the following year, they give us a growth projection for the following year, which we include in the budget. And also they include an estimate for assessment. So these are changes that happen throughout the year for assessment. So new properties that are coming on board, or that the class that is changing for these properties. So one example I would give is from vacant land to when a building is actually built, the tax class is actually different. Supplementary taxes actually takes into consideration that mid-year change. So when a condo building is built and registered, we then recognize that supplementary tax in the year that it's registered. So what we're experiencing right now is over the last couple of years, we are seeing the trend, a trend that is lower in what we're seeing in terms of those mid-year changes. It could be a number of different factors. It could be timing. It could potentially be also a sign of the change in the industry as well. So we are looking into it. We are investigating, and it will be part of the operating budget discussion that we bring back. So that's somewhat related to assessment growth as well.
That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I do support the motion on the floor, and I do also want to extend thanks for all the work that's been done to this point in bringing these forecasts forward and making these projections and highlighting, what the significant changes have been. I do understand them, and I do agree with the large surplus being transferred to mill rate stabilization. Members of council will recall that we went through a very difficult exercise where we were over forecasting our investment income, and we were getting much less revenue, and we had to adjust down. We couldn't absorb the adjustment in 1 year, and we phased that in over a period of time, and it was difficult because we started every budget, needing to find money before we even planned anything. So I don't want a knee-jerk response where we're raising our expectations in the future for investment income. I think the mill rate stabilization is the best way to adjust for those fluctuations, and I'd rather estimate lower than higher. So, complete support of the motion on the floor and the receipt with thanks for the presentation. And I'll just pass it back to the mayor who wants to do a wrap up on his motion.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. Actually, I'll just start off by saying, Chair DiPaolo, I agree with you 100% that, transferring this amount of money to the tax rate stabilization account is very important because we have been drawing on it for a number of years that I've been on council. And now we've weaned ourselves off that practice. We need to be building it back up. It's an important account because it's basically a rainy day account, right, in a lot of ways. And I think that's very important for our financial health to have that. I do want to just comment. I think, and I want to leave this up to staff because it's important for in the staff report back that staff communicates to us on council just how they could potentially use this extra help right now. Because I think with the size of the surplus that we have, it is an opportune time for us to move the needle forward on housing affordability without digging immediately into the tax rate. And I think that's very important. It's a bit of a unusual circumstance, which I'd like to see us leverage as much as we can. But in my estimation, and from what I've observed and the thoughts and research that I've been doing, I don't believe we have all of the resources in place on staff in order to fully leverage all of the opportunities that are out there. I mean, we do have jurisdictional issues as a municipality to have all of the things, all of the levers that we want to dictate housing affordability, but we have some. And, Regional Local Councillor Deputy Mayor Chan mentioned that, there are really good organizations out there. And I appreciate the example that Mr. Glennis had given us that, Habitat for Humanity is one of them. And, but we don't have the staff resources to make sure that we're engaging those organizations to the degree that this crisis in housing would dictate that we must. And so that's really what I'm looking for out of this, is to be able to have the capacity to have this as a significant priority that it is in our organization. And I also think that this would send a very clear message to the development community that we're serious about this, to the public that we're serious about this, and finally to the province that, they've asked us to do our part. We're going to be doing our part. We still have concerns about all of the concerns about Bill 23 and some of the mechanisms that we would like to have at our disposal. But for what we have right now, we start where we start, and this is where we are today. So anyway, thank you very much for the support, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the report back from staff.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, very good. Move on to 4.2. This item is regard to an update on our budget consultation process. And Mayor West will start us off again on this.
Okay, thank you. So I'm happy to move the staff recommendations on this. I think it's very important that we're doing all the things that we can be and should be doing with regard to getting out to the public and getting their input on the budget. I know in the past it's been challenging to the budget's not always the most interesting and sexy topic on the public's mind, but it is really, really important, and we need to get the public's feedback on that. So I realize the challenges that are described in the staff report, and I do expect that staff will be doing whatever they can as soon as possible to get those consultations out in the community and getting the feedback from the community that we need in order to go forward on this. So happy to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor West, for moving the motion. I'm glad to see that actually this came up recently, I think last Wednesday, on one of the pending item lists, because that's coming from a motion I moved back February 14, Valentine's motion. And I think we already touched on last Wednesday. It will be coming back, so I understand, because we get into the also strategic plan exercise. But like what the mayor said, I strongly believe that at the end of the day, regardless whether we're mayor, deputy mayor, regional council, or councillors, we are all great peers in this city. So I think to the extent that we would engage as much we can using the latest technology, certain things we tried in the past, like a library, shopping mall, and things that maybe we improve upon, or even individually as council member, we can do in our way, engaging residents in some form. So I would, for one, I say yes, please come back with a comprehensive plan, so that, and also if there are any more up-to-date tool than the one we used once, the citizen budget, that's great, that's welcoming news. And I think this is something that talking about engaging community in general matter, very helpful. So I look forward to that. In fact, the proposal, I think, is coming back almost 2 months from now, November 21st. Looking forward to it. Happy to support it.
Okay, Councillor David.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask two questions about your graphics? Is now the time to do that? I'm interested to know if 14% water loss is normal or if we need to improve infrastructure. Did I misunderstand that slide? The water loss slide left me lost.
I was confused there too. I'm going to allow the question because I probably didn't make it clear to committee that under 4.1 we got hung up on the new motion, but that was also the time to ask
Oh,
general
sorry.
questions.
I'm sorry. Okay, never
It-
mind. I can talk to you later.
No need to
I
be
was
sorry.
confused. I thought we were just talking about the motion there. My
No,
apologies.
I didn't make it clear to committee members, and I was actually surprised there weren't any questions on such a large presentation. But please, I'm going to allow it. I'm going to allow our
Okay,
treasurer to
thank
answer
you.
this question. I was confused myself, and she explained it to me very well.
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson. So the water loss percentage is actually a representation of the unbillable water, right? So we purchase the water from the region at the wholesale rate. This is water that we are not able to capture and then bill as at the retail rate. So essentially the water loss percentage is significantly higher than what we have originally forecasted. So there's been a lot of work over the last few years to get that water loss percentage down to what we're budgeting at 11.9%. So what we've experienced over the last 2 years, which started in 2022, was a number of water main breaks. So in 2021, for example, we had 16. 2022, we actually had 49. And in 2023 year to date, we're at 26, which is what you see on the slide here. So we are experiencing that higher water loss because of the number of water main breaks that we are seeing over the last little while.
You and for you, Mr. Chair, can I just ask in terms of comparable with other municipalities, is this standard? I assume we can't dig up every water main and go, I wonder if it's going to break. So it's sort of a as it comes problem, right? And we're just getting to the age in some neighborhoods that it's happening more often of late. Is that a fair understanding?
I think Executive Director Massaro might answer the go ahead.
Thank you for the question through the chair. It's difficult to compare our entire network to any other municipalities because the quantity of that infrastructure varies between municipality to municipality. But what it does highlight is the importance of investing in our aging infrastructure. And by doing so, this is another area where we'll find savings in the future. So when we do come forward with our capital budget and we ask for this funding, it's the opportunity to recognize the link between investing in our capital and our aging infrastructure and the operating impacts.
Thank you. Excellent. And one last question to you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, is there a really like in 2 sentences way to make me understand the YRT thing there about revenue we can't count on? I was confused there that it's revenue that we may or may not have in the future. I didn't quite follow that one.
Yeah, the region owns a building in Ward 3, and they at some point will not. There'll be a provincial ruling that they don't have to pay us taxes anymore. We know that ruling's coming. In the meantime, they're giving us the tax amount that they would a building that size would normally pay, and we don't budget for it. Our budget says there's no income, so we get this positive variance every time they pay it. And I think it's the proper way to go, and I agree with it.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll put it out there. Did anyone else have questions that they wanted to ask and didn't have the opportunity?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ward 1 Councillor Davidson opens the opportunity. In fact, I do have the same question when I was reading it before I come to the meeting today, but that was answered about the wastewater. And one issue is actually on page 6 of the report. I noted that because of the situation of the emergency response fire alarm revenues, it actually create about 125,000 revenues less. In addition, I think it means addition, which is another 100,000 at. So total is 225 variance, $1,000 variance. I'm wondering whether in fact staff might have considered, if you have, then I'd like to hear that from Mr. Chair, is consideration of that collection, whether in fact, if they have turned their mind to it, is that really effective? If you spend $80,000 for the debt collector, of course, it's probably not worth it. So I just want to, through Mr. Chair, to the staff, is that ever been considered about more, what's the proper term? Use means that could possibly collect, and part of this 100,000, we're asking operation to write off. So
Ms. Lee?
Through the chair, so the answer really is we do have the process in place. So specific to motor vehicle accidents, the billing, the uncollectible is not sent to the collection agency until after we've made 3 attempts. So we do try to make those attempts internally. After 3 unsuccessful attempts, we then transfer it, or we give it off to the collection agency. So you've noted the increase in revenue in the bad debt provision, and that's really just based on, from our perspective, we look at a percentage as a provision that we need to include for uncollectible. So overall, because the uncollectible is trending a lot higher. So when we look at the percentage of that additional that is not being collected, that's why we're asking and we're recommending that we need to increase the provision. So back to your earlier question, we do have a process in place for motor vehicle accident billing. We don't have one for false alarm, and that's because of a prior council direction. But we do have a collection process in place that we do either internally or externally for motor vehicle accidents.
through Mr. Chair, thank you, Director Lee, for the answer. So perhaps if it's the trend, I hope it's not continuing. Council maybe in the talking about later year's budget may have to think about whether that in fact should be just like people fail to comply with the bylaw, not cutting the grass up, they get a notice. The city staff will be happy to mount the lawn for you, but then whatever charges go to your tax bill. So I think that may be something to look at in the future. But thank you for the explanation. I hope the trend is not continuing. The only other thing is that maybe I don't need an answer, it's a comment, because I do in the beginning of probably a year ago was talking about when we're looking at and the mayor talking about, because my intent is always try to have the tax rate be as low as possible. So I did mention about personal gapping a year ago, whether you can look at it. And to be honest, I'm a bit surprised that actually we are actually not actually have a savings, so to speak, but actually have a variance on the negative side. There's something maybe I take offline to ask staff why is the case, because usually they will contribute to a positive variance versus negative variance. And that's on page 5. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And as was said, we will be revisiting these items. These items have been highlighted for a reason. We'll be monitoring, how best to estimate, during the 2024 budget process. These numbers that varied significantly. Okay, so thank you, committee, for your indulgence and in permitting us to suspend our procedural bylaw and going back for a couple of questions on 4.1, but we have a motion on the floor on 4.2. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so I don't see any, but I just want to say that I do I do strongly support staff's recommendation here. I think it's great that in 2025 budget process, they're going to implement a more wholesome consultation process. It has to be done right. It's something I've wanted to see, but I also don't want to. I think it's premature in 2024 until our strategic plan is finalized and we know what our priorities are and how to go about this. I think it has to be done right and would have needed to be planned before today to properly engage the community in a wholesome budget consultation. So we're going to be doing that in the second half of 2024. And I welcome that. I endorse and support this motion and this process. Did anyone else want to speak? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Great, that carries. So we move to item 4.3, and we have another presentation from our treasurer. This is regarding our tariff of fees update, and this is something that we are required by law to do every year. And there's a proposal in front of us to be adopted. Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next presentation is on agenda item 4.3, the 2024 tariff of fees update. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the tariff of fees is an annual review where fees are updated in coordination with the operating budget process. It incorporates new fees and contemplates varying levels of existing fee increases. The revenue impacts are calculated in consideration of the budget direction, and efforts are made to balance the fee increases with the overall economic climate. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the annual tariff of fee review process and how that fits into the rest of the financial planning and budget process. In June, Council approved the budget strategy. We're here today to present the user fee review and updates. At the subsequent BCW meeting, staff will present the capital budget as well as the operating budget for consideration. Next slide, please. Fees are reviewed and updated annually to ensure the consideration on the slides are met, to ensure the increases are justifiable and reasonable for cost recovery, affordable yet competitive, and that the fees are comparable with neighboring municipalities. As part of this review, the guideline generally is to increase the fees by at least CPI. Next slide, please. The fees are grouped into one of the four categories noted on the slide, being legislative, regulatory, cost recovery, and community fees. I can provide an example of each of those. For legislative fees, these are fees from the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. For regulatory fees, these are parking fines, permits, sign permits, and dog licensing fees, etc. For cost recovery, these are inspection fees, engineering review fees, where they're implemented to fully recuperate the cost of the programs and the services that are being provided. Last but not least, in community fees, these largely represent the recreation and culture fees. Next slide, please. The CPI guideline for 2024 is 2.4% based on the Conference Board of Canada Composite Bank forecast. The table on the slide highlights the discrepancy between the CPI forecasts and what's being used for the fee review versus what the actual reported inflation was. At one point, it was said that inflation will be transitory, meaning it moves about a steady rate for a short period of time and then reverts back. In reality, we're experiencing persistent inflationary pressures due to high interest rates, rising prices, wage increases, supply chain constraints, as well as strong demand for goods and services. As a matter of fact, the August inflation rate was at 4%, and that compares to the 3.3% in July, and also the 2.8% that was in the prior month. Households are faced with high inflation. So do the municipalities. We also face similar, if not pressures at an even higher level. Internal direction that was given was to increase by CPI at a minimum. So that would be the 2.4%, and to increase it above CPI where it's necessary to recover the costs of the programs. This update includes just over 1,200 fees, and the details are shown on the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. I talked about the inflationary pressures on the previous slide. There are also other factors that contribute or that are being considered as part of this fee review. Legislated minimum wage increases and other cost of living adjustments for part-time staff are important factors in this review. And combined with inflationary pressures, they represent significant impact to the Recreation and Culture 2024 operating budget. Fees are increased. Fee increase are proposed to recover cost, and they are in line with benchmarking with neighboring municipalities. Next slide, please. This table highlights the total number of fees. That is the 1,233 that you see in the total fees column. It also highlights the new fees that are being proposed. So we have 26 new fees that are being proposed. And the fees that are unchanged with no increases, no changes going to 2024, we have about 112 of those. And then just over 300 fees that are increased by CPI, so the 2.4% or less. And we do have 781 fees that are increased by greater than the 2.4% CPI. Overall, the estimated additional revenue would be $1.1 million additional revenue to the operating budget and about $120,000 for the water and wastewater budget. Next slide, please. Similar to the previous slide, this table highlights the total fees that are within the Recreation and Culture Division, the fees that are new being proposed, which is at 23, the fees that are not changed for 2024, the fees that are amended by CPI, and also the fees that are amended greater than CPI. So this slide focuses on the Recreation and Culture fees. Next slide, please. Appendix C in the staff report is the memo that's provided by the Commissioner as well as the Recreation and Culture Division that outlines the details of those fee changes. What we have over this and the following slide really is a high-level summary of those changes. As I noted earlier, there are 753 fees increased by more than CPI, the 2.4%. And as you can see on this slide, out of the 753, we do have a number of them that are going higher, but less than 10%. And we do have 532 fees that are increased by 10%. Most of the fees have been increased based on a thorough municipal comparison and benchmarking exercise with our neighboring municipalities, Vaughan and Markham. As we've noted on this slide here, Markham has increased their fees on average by almost 5% in 2022, and then another 5% in 2023 for 2024. So as you can see, they have increased their fees over 2 years, approximately 10% or so, which is essentially what we're proposing here, is that catch up so that we are comparable with our neighboring municipalities. And also to ensure the full cost or cost recovery. So at the bottom of the slide, the last bullet really highlights the revenue impact from the increase of these fees. With these recommendations for fee increases, we are looking to mitigate approximately just over $1 million of impact related to minimum wage, cost of living adjustments, and other related budgetary pressures within a division. Next slide. So again, the details of these changes or these recommendations are in the memo. What we've highlighted here are the fees that are seeing no increases in 2024. So these are the National Lifeguard and Swim life-saving instructor programs to align with our neighboring municipalities, and also some of the preschool drop-ins, the indoor track memberships, etc. And where we see increases that are above CPI, the majority of them are general programs in aquatics, fitness, skating, and culture. And then we do have a number of increases related to the Richmond Center of Performing Arts and the rental fees. Next slide, please. Earlier on, I talked about the 22 26 new fees that are being proposed for 2024. What we have here is a highlight of where these new fees are being implemented. As you can see, we do have 2 in the community standards division and with minimal revenue impact. We do have 23 of them in the recreation and culture services division, and there is net revenue neutral impact, and those are the fees that are being recommended. Last but not least, we do have 1 new fee that's being recommended for parks operations and events, and we are anticipating an additional revenue impact of about $1,000. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the bylaw recommendation or the staff recommendation as it relates to streamlining the bylaw for the annual process. What we've noted here is the tariff of fees, it's already inclusive convenience fees. Over the last couple of years, the city continues to provide more online services to the community. And as a result, there is a transaction fee that is incurred, and we pass that along to the user. So there is no net impact to the city for these credit card payments because it's additional convenience fee that is paid by the user. This bylaw update recommends that we include and embed those convenience fees into the total fee as opposed to doing it on the side. So it is a bit of a what I would call housekeeping matter. So the users have always paid it as a separate item. This recommendation merely incorporates and combines everything into the total fee. So what they see as the total fee is what they're going to be paying for, which factors in those transaction fees. Next slide. Again, this is another bylaw update to streamline the annual process with respect to tariff of fees. And that is to update the language that's in the fees, that's in the bylaw with respect to the fees indexing. So what we have in the bylaw currently is actually looking at StatsCan, so Statistics Canada and their CPI, and is based on history. So what we have done over the last couple of years is really looking at a forward-looking trend when it comes to inflation and indexing, as opposed to looking backwards. As we know, it's really a different environment that we operate in right now. So the language and the proposal recommendation in here is that the fee index to be forward-looking and that it be approved by the treasurer as to what that index may be. So earlier I talked about the Conference Board of Canada and the Composite Bank, which is the CPI that we used. It's forward-looking. That is the anticipated forecast for inflation for next year. So that's already something that we're doing. So essentially what this recommendation is, it's really to formalize that so that we are looking at a forward-looking index. And also another recommendation is to remove the reference to the pandemic while keeping the delegated authority of no more than 5%. So again, this is another piece of housekeeping. Next slide, please. The recommendations of the report, first item being that the proposed fee set out in the draft bylaw 94-23 be adopted, and that council approve the tariff of fee bylaw to be amended to delegate the fee index to the treasurer. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. We also appreciate that you were more quicker with those 2 presentations than it was proposed. So that's a positive variance from what was expected. So good to see. But thank you very much. I know it's a lot of work to put these tariff fees together, to take a look at everything, every single thing that we charge for and to propose an amount. And it's not taken lightly, the work that goes into it, the consultation, seniors and others are give a lot of feedback when they have to pay more for community programming and services. So I'll start the discussion off with going to Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to our director, Gigi, thank you so much for preparing all those details. And I do have a few questions. The first one is regarding to this slide for the total fee charges. It's like so we have more than 1,000 here. As I echo to our regional councillor Jody Palo's comments. So I already received many complaints from senior communities. They are seeing compared with the city of Toronto, right? Majority of facilities and the fees are either very low or there's no charge at all. And I'm looking for the tables here. So I know there is one slide just for senior fees. The question is, how much impact as average this fee charge will be to our senior groups? Like a 3%, 4% compared with current fee for seniors, or there are more? Do we have any information here?
Okay, Ms. Jocelyn?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure exactly what fees you're referring to, but I can tell you that if there are senior groups that are made up of 55 plus that are renting Richmond Hill facilities, they're provided a 50% subsidy on the facility rental rate. In terms of the 55 plus programming, the fees that we establish are subsidized as well in there to reach the affordability rate. And in addition to that, we do have a financial subsidy policy. So if we do have any 55 plus individuals that are experiencing some challenges with affording to pay the fee, we have an application process. Well, we will subsidize them a further amount to be able to ensure that they gain access into those programs. So without knowing specifically which area of the seniors fees you're interested in, those are the two main ones that we have.
Okay, thank you so much for our city managers. My following up question will be, is this the subsidies available right now, or it's going to be in the pipeline? Do we have existing, or just we are proposing a new solution to get the fee lower than before?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the facility, the subsidy program has been in place for many, many years. So it's currently available now. If somebody requires that, then Commissioner Steele or Director Hearn can direct them in to the right place to go through that subsidy process.
Okay, thank you so much. So my concern is still here as well. Since we resolve, I don't know which factors, because there are tons of fees. Maybe later on, if we charge more, we might get more negative feedback from our senior community. That is my concern. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Next speaker is Deputy Mayor Chan.
Councillor Davis, and raise hand first. Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, thank you, staff. It's not easy to have so many fees across all divisions, all kinds of programs, and come back with a report. Although it's only less than 10 pages, I'm sure that staff spend many hours on it. Thank you for doing that. And it's not easy every year. And thank you, Councillor Tree, for raising the question on seniors. I think in the past, if I can remember correctly, Councillor New probably and myself have raised questions on that seniors issue because, in fact, I happen to sit on the age-friendly community council, which comprises of, except me, everybody is of the 55 plus and most likely seniors from the community. And there's actually another council meeting coming up this Friday. At the meetings, that Commissioner can talk to our competent manager, Ash there. I have been hearing people saying, I don't know how, I don't say accurate, but people were saying, oh, look at next door, Markham or Vaughan or somewhere to say, oh, we got really either next to nothing fee to pay for or very minimal. So perhaps actually the forum at the age-friendly community council could be a place to maybe get that message. I know the agenda for this Friday is set, but maybe the materials to share with them. The process our staff have gone through, because I got almost every year, particularly from senior groups. Oh, you're increasing the fee again. Yes, right. While buying the cost of banana goes up too. Sure, market, I don't like it. But perhaps it's also that, I don't want to call education, but further clarification, because I keep hearing about, oh, we could go next door, you know, east of 404 or west of Bathurst to get that. Now, they do have a question through Mr. Chair, either treasurer or maybe a commissioner or city manager to answer that. We do have programs partnering with, for example, Bayview Hill Community Center with Care First. Would our tariff of fees also apply to people who use that program? Because I understand now, seniors who use those programs, they have to join the 55 plus program first. So if that's the case, I presume they're also subject to this new tariff of fees every year. Is that the case? Through Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in our partnership agreement, all of the Care First members, and we have partnered with them at Bayview Hill and other locations, must become a 55 plus member first. But the fees for the programs are set by Care First. So the fees for those individual programs do not sit within our fee bylaw. Those members, however, are eligible to participate in the full 55 plus membership that the city provides, and those fees would apply to the programs of choice that they might want to take through us. But the Care First ones, they do it a little bit differently, whether they do it with volunteering or other mathematical equations. Those are how the program fees are tracked.
Good, thank you. Yeah, it's good that we have some new fees like what's that, horse riding permit, and that's good. It's always good to have an opportunity to get new revenues. Now I do notice this permit fees for if you're shooting for wherever, maybe commercial or something at our Richmond Hill David Dunlop Observatory Park, which is also Canada's National Historic Site. Maybe I missed it. Is there a category we still have? Maybe it's for under economic development. People want to come here to do commercial shots, whether it's movies and TV. Is an opportunity there for us to expand on that potential revenue source? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do still have the film permit fees, and they're applicable now and moving forward. The problem this year has been the strike, so there's not that much filming.
Right. But the Canadian actor members are still doing their thing. Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think that perhaps to the extent possible, Commissioner, if our staff at the Age-Friendly Community Council, either this Friday meeting was too soon, but share some of this rationale for tariff fees for seniors will be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Davidson?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Can I ask, the fee increases, does that just cover what we're doing now, or does it provide any leeway to expand any of the programs? I think every time we offer swimming lessons and other things, people wish there were more. Is the fee increase just to sustain what we have?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the fee increase is based on a balance between cost recovery, staying competitive, and also being affordable. It works within additional programs. So if we have the ability to expand and offer more programs, we will, and it'll still be at the same cost. So the cost stays the same, even though it's. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. The other thing I want to know, how can I pay my bills without incurring the 2.5, was it? 2.6, The credit card fee, you said it would be tacked on, it would be not separate, but I'm assuming if I don't use a credit card and I drive here and I pay, that gets knocked off it, or was that actually in there?
So the fees through the chair to the counselor. So the fees represent the actual fee that will be paid, be it credit card or in person through cash. And the reason being, there's actually a lot more processing costs. And administratively, it's actually more costly for us to process a check. So if you imagine you come in, you bring cash in, you bring check, we actually need to process the cash and then have that sent to the bank, deposit it. So there's actually a lot more administration that's involved. So we are encouraging electronic payment, and the fee actually represents the fee that is to, regardless of payment options, that is what we're proposing.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, that's not new. That processing fee has always been there. It's just been listed on your tax bill in a different way.
The convenience fee is on the tariff fees, and it's a percentage. So it's used to be an addition. So it's almost like a tax. So it gets added on to the total as a percentage. But moving forward, what we're recommending is, in light of the administration, we are recommending that it all be embedded so that it's one fee. So if it's $3.50, that's already embedding the convenience fee and the percentage. So it's not $3 plus 2.6%.
Give me through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, okay. What's the 2.6% of? It's not your whole tax bill, is it? No, the 2.6 is.
This is related to the fee increase. Maybe we can go back to.
If it's too much in the weeds, I can talk to you offline.
Sure, we can do that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Silovitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, staff. Treasurer Lee, thank you for your presentations and all the work done by the department. Just one question through you, Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Steele. Not to put you on the spot or anything, it's just a thought that I've had. Do any York Region municipalities exempt seniors from paying fees? Do you know? Does it exist?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't be able to answer that confidently. I'm not sure if the city manager knows, and if you're talking just about recreations fees specifically.
Yeah, recreation community fees.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just based on the last benchmarking that I was involved with, all municipalities within the region have different funding models. But there are fees charged to 55 plus people for programs and services to some degree. Some of them have different subsidy models in place, and some municipalities dedicate more staff. So as an example, in the city of Vaughan, they may provide facility rental at a very discounted price. But what goes along with that is any seniors club that forms in the city of Vaughan has a staff member, a full-time staff member assigned to it, and that staff member sits with that club and guides them through their governing body, their finances, their access, program delivery, et cetera. So it's just an extreme model. Vaughan is the only one in the region I know that that goes that route. So, but it's all over the map. None of us are consistent. The consistent thing is that we're all reviewing how we should approach senior 55. I say seniors. We used to call it seniors. It's 55 plus now. And the makeup of that 55 plus group has changed quite significantly. So your 55 to 65, 70 group are more probably affluent than maybe they have been in the past. And you have some 90 plus that maybe need more support than the younger senior, if you will. So that is something that Commissioner Steele's section is going to be looking at, and it's a good suggestion that we take that data through the Aging Communities Committee to have that conversation. If council recalls, when we brought the pricing formula forward in 2016, it did advise us to go through this review and perhaps look at our 55 plus memberships a little bit differently, where it gets more affordable the older the individual is, but that the program fees need to be cost recovery.
Right.
That's why we put into place the financial subsidy policy. So regardless of your age, whether you're 30 with a family of 3 children that requires some assistance to put the kids through recreation, whether you're 85 and need that assistance, whether you're 55, it doesn't set a bias based on age. That financial subsidy policy is there to provide any but individual or family in Richmond Hill with some financial support to give them access to our services.
Thank you, Ms. Jocelyn. I appreciate that. And I think it's good that we're looking at it, because not only is that 55 plus group expanding as we get more and more seniors, as our demographic, becomes older, but also there are definitely those who are struggling more financially. And that's not only the seniors, it's everybody. So I appreciate that it's going to be looked at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, as you can see, there's an extensive table that's being proposed in the motion that we have on the floor, and item 4.3. I don't any other discussion, but I'll just add that I was really pleased to see the average increase that's being proposed here today, knowing the inflationary pressures that we're facing, and that what municipalities' costs are higher than the typical CPI. Even the standard across the board average inflation, our costs are even higher than that. There's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the significant one is I think a 9% increase in minimum wage costs that we're absorbing in this budget cycle. So the fact that these percentage increases are under 3% overall, I think is very good. So I thank our staff for preparing this report, and I support it, and I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Did we have another speaker? I'm sorry, Councillor Tree. I didn't see your hand up there.
Okay, thank you so much,
You
Mr.
have a
Chair.
question? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm not sure is this good way or not. Today we're just talking about the budget, but from my perspective, if you look at the slide 9, and regarding seniors, totally we have 62 fees for seniors, and amended the greater than 2.4% is the 60%, 60 of them. From my perspective, my potential intent will be, if that possible, in 2023, we can freeze any fee increasement for senior. I don't know how much money or how much deficit that's going to be lead. So I would recommend it maybe city staff to have an evaluation to see if we freezing that 60 items of fee, how much of the deficit we're going to get. Can we find any other incomes to fit or to meet, to just make that balance? So my intention, our intention just trying to maybe freeze any tax increase or fee increase just for senior category. Is that going to be a reporting or researching coming back to committee members next time? Or is that going to be redirected to our age-friendly community for further review? I don't know. I just threw this question here. What's the best approach to make this happen, to freeze that charges for senior?
Okay. One moment, Ms. Lee. I think the mayor wants to propose an answer. Okay. So, Madam Treasurer, you go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as the city manager was saying, the age-friendly community strategy does speak to reevaluating the way that we have fees for seniors and the way that we provide discounts to make sure that the fees that we are discounting are actually going to the seniors that are in need. So I would suggest that we wait for that to happen over the next year and make any adjustment like you're suggesting, if necessary, through next year's tariff of fees. And I'll turn it over to the treasurer with that.
Nothing to add there? Okay. Okay, well, as was said, I mean, you can reach out to Commissioner Steele to understand the seniors subsidy programs that are available. And, you know, after these fees are set, you know, you can see what's available to access for seniors to get discounts, but then there is more wholesome evaluation going to be done for the future from our age-friendly committee. So that answers your question, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much. I might pass that my concerns or inquiries to the age-friendly committee. Let them review the possibilities, either freezing or maybe just either have a better support for our senior group. Thank you. I don't have further questions.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor West wants to speak again.
Okay, thank you. I just quickly, again, thank you for all the work on this. You know, I've been on council for a number of years now, and I've gone through this tariff of fees exercise every year. And, you know, it's clear to me that this is like, you know, very much like walking a tightrope, right? Because we're trying to keep the fees as low as possible, but at the same time, we need to recover as much of the fees as possible in order to that the programs at least come somewhat close to paying for themselves. I think in my mind, the goal here is to make the cost of the programs, the recreation programs especially, as inclusive and accessible to as many people as we possibly can, and balance that with recovering as much cost as we can. Because you have to remember, in this environment, in a public environment like this, every dollar that we don't receive for a program that helps with the recovery of costs, the rest of the taxpayers pay for it, regardless of whether they use that service or not. So I think if we're going to be targeting people who are struggling to pay for a program that would enrich their lives, that they need, whatever that we offer, I think I appreciate the approach the staff has always taken, and it sounds like we're even going to delve deeper into it with regard to the seniors, that we really look at, are we targeting where the need is? Because if we take a blanket shotgun approach and we just freeze services, then we're freezing services for potentially for customers that really don't need the freeze, but we're not offering as much help to those that do need the freeze. What I would much rather see is take a more specific and targeted approach so that the people that need the help get the help. The people that don't need the help, you know, they have a reasonably priced product available to them. But if they're able to pay for it, that's fine. I really would encourage staff to continue to, you know, really target where we need to supply the help. Because what I know we all want to make sure that anybody in our community that wants to join up for a sports program, that wants to join up for a recreation program, whatever it may be, you know, cost is not a barrier. And I know we don't, you know, we probably don't hit the bullseye every single time, but we sure do through this exercise try to make sure that we do. So anyway, that's the general principle that I have seen in the past in Richmond Hill, and I'd like to continue to see staff carry on with. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I will say that I too endorse the concept of cost recovery, because those who use it are paying for it, and no one is forced to be paying for programs or services that they don't use, and therefore our residents on a tight budget are not compelled to pay more than they have to. So I'm going to call the question now. No, the clerk. Oh, okay, so no one actually moved the motion. Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. The staff recommendation in item 4.3 here. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Very good. Thanks again to our treasurer, Gigi Lee, and your staff and all the work that you've done to this point. And we look forward to continuing the budget cycle. And all we require now is a motion for adjournment. Okay, Deputy Mayor Chan's all over that. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Surprisingly, that carries unanimously as well. Okay. Oh, and I just thought maybe it's important to point out that as we're talking about new fees, that we are not making any derogatory stance to Eastern Canadians. I just thought that might need to be said. Meeting stands adjourned.